Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Dominic Black from Cavell. Thank you for all joining our webinar today on the impact on coronavirus on the cloud communications industry. I'm sure you're all joining from your homes around the world. I'd like to thank you all for taking the time out of your schedule to come and join us here. We decided to do this survey as we were working with a number of different providers who were interested in how this is really impacting the market, what's happening here, how things are moving forward. So we ran a quick survey over the last couple of weeks to really understand what that impact's been. We're looking at running this survey and continuing to run this survey over the next few weeks with some updated questions, obviously, as we move forward to really keep a kind of finger on the pulse of what's happening within the industry, how we're all reacting to this. Whether this is just a very fast few months where people move to the cloud, and then looking at how that's going to change going forward in the future. Especially for us, we're incredibly interested in how people are performing within these months. As many of you know, we do our cloud communications market reports, tracking how fast people are moving to the cloud, and we'll be updating our forecasts for all the reports that we've done in the next couple of weeks to make sure that everyone who's bought them has the most up-to-date data from there. So without further ado, I'm going to crack on and move forward. So I'd like to kind of highlight a couple of key points that were raised out of our Enterprise Insights last year. So we did our Enterprise Insight report last year, did a study of 1,800 businesses across North America and EMEA. And what was interesting out of them was we were interested in how remote working is changing, what the likelihood of adoption of different technologies would be over the next 2 years. And since then, things have changed fairly significantly, as I'm sure you're all aware. With everyone moving to remote working and being forced to, obviously that's made a big impact on what our forecasts were for these. So we've had to change around some of our data, and we're going to be running this in the next couple of years, in the next couple of months as well, doing the same enterprise study, looking at how this has changed the way that people are consuming telecoms and what different services they're looking to adopt. As you can see from here, our stats on document sharing, video conferencing. Video conferencing was the second most, enterprises was the second most likely to adopt within the next 2 years. And as we go through this, you'll see that the data has changed pretty dramatically due to COVID through this. For those who filled out the survey, what I wanted to kind of highlight at the top level was, on average, we've seen an almost 40% increase in new business inquiries over the last month due to COVID. What that's resulted in is just under 30%, I think it was 28.5% increase in new business wins. So massive increase there in new wins. And interestingly, if we look at that in the actual number of cloud communications users added, comparing the last month to a normal month, on average, the providers came back and said they had a 79% increase in new users added in the last month compared to previous months. So not only are we seeing massive new wins, but massive new numbers of cloud communications users added in that period as well. So it's been a really interesting time for the industry, as a lot of providers are having to focus on how we're delivering these and making sure that we're moving all these people to cloud, whilst making sure support and all those other areas are staying as well supported as they could be in this time. In terms of products coming out, looking at kind of 4 key product areas here. Team collaboration and video conferencing usage has increased enormously over the last month. As you saw from our first slide, some of the data that we were showing was that 40% of companies were looking to adopt within the next 2 years. But for those who have actually adopted these, we're seeing a 43% increase in providers looking, seeing their increase between 50 and 100%, and 19% have seen the usage of team collaboration increase by over 100%. So massive growth on all these different services. And as you can see there, video conferencing shows that same trend. Interestingly though, voice minute usage hasn't changed as significantly as we thought it would do. So what we were kind of looking at this and thinking was, a lot of people would be using voice, as they still go to home and work from home and work remotely, that voice usage would still be a fairly common trend here. But really, it's been on the video collab, audio conferencing, and team collaboration messaging as well. So fascinating to see that the trend that we've been talking about for years, that people move to video, may actually be taking hold here. Obviously, as we move towards the future and look a little bit deeper at what happens when this all dies down and potentially move back to the offices, are we going to still see as many people using video conferencing, audio conferencing? Will people start reverting back to using just normal voice minutes and looking for UC from a voice perspective, or are they looking for video and messaging in their solutions as well? I think this is going to put a pretty big strain on the industry moving forward. When we spoke to a lot of providers, most of them are still not offering team collaboration services or video conferencing services as part of their core solution. So it's really important that a lot of providers are going to have to look at their portfolios moving forward into the future and making sure that they have the right products in place to serve this changing need. If we're going to look a little bit deeper at what products are looking into, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Patrick, who's done quite a bit of work around the product side here, who's going to take us through the next few slides. So Patrick, I'm just going to hand over to you if you want to take from here.
Afternoon all. So this slide again comes from the study that Dom was talking about previously, which was our Enterprise Insight Report 2019. And this was looking in businesses of all sizes about the awareness of different solutions. And as you can see there, as the size of business rose from small into very large enterprise, the awareness of these solutions and the four we've highlighted here, Microsoft Teams, Cisco WebEx Teams, Slack and Zoom rose. But I think you'll all agree that the awareness of these solutions is probably going to have dramatically increased in terms of visibility and also use and adoption within the enterprise. So we just wanted to highlight there that there was a relative lack of awareness even that these solutions existed. I mean, if you look there at Zoom, only under 30% of small businesses with less than 49 users were even aware of Zoom as a platform. And I think with the amount of publicity that especially Zoom and Microsoft Teams have got, the level of awareness is going to have increased dramatically. You can go to the next slide there, Dom. So this is from our current study. So out of the surveyed respondents, we asked what products have been requested most by end customers. So this is either we want to use this product, we want to integrate with this product, and you can see that there's a dramatic sway towards 60% of organizations, either service providers or telcos or vendors that we've surveyed, have had requests about Microsoft Teams usage. So 60% of those is pretty vast. You'd have thought there that the level of publicity that Zoom had been receiving was slightly more, but only 30%. And also as we go down, Cisco and Slack, relatively small amounts of requests from users. I think the particularly interesting thing there as well, and something that we highlighted with our focus on Microsoft's collaboration portfolio, is also the increasing interest in Skype for Business, which effectively Skype for Business Online is going to be end of life by the end of next year, but still a lot of businesses are getting requests for Skype for Business. And that may well correlate to the rising popularity and awareness of Skype in the consumer world. As businesses are seeing their families use Skype in consumer, maybe they're thinking, oh, we can still use this for business. But this slide really highlighted that so many organizations within the industry are getting requests from these tier one vendor solutions, either looking to add them to their portfolios or integrate them to portfolios to support customer demand. So you can go on to the next slide there, Dom. So in terms of this changing demand, we've seen obviously the requirement for remote working and work from home solutions increase dramatically. How has the industry responded to this? So we wanted to find out what service providers, what vendors, what telcos are doing potentially to try and ease the burden of this rapid enforced change. And we've seen the majority and the primary route has been through the use of free trials or freemium models, with nearly 80% of organizations now offering a free trial or freemium equivalent. And obviously this is massively encouraging for enterprise organizations who are looking to minimize costs, but they've got an absolute requirement now to move to some sort of platform which enables work from home or remote working. We've seen less in terms of discounts and less in terms of short-term contracts, but we think that the free trial, and we've seen a lot, and I'll come on to some of the vendor-specific examples in a moment, offering free licenses for 3 months or 90-day period or a certain amount of time. But that free license model has been the primary route to market to try and ease the enterprise demand in this sector. You can hit the next one there, Dom. So what we've tried to look at here are some of the responses from the industry's biggest vendors. So in this slide, I've highlighted Microsoft, Cisco, and Zoom there, and you can see some of the offerings that they've made available. Microsoft Teams have made the premium version of its Teams application now available for free on a 6-month trial. Cisco's added more features to its pre-existing freemium version, and Zoom slightly less so. It's limited. It's removed the time limit from meetings in China and some other impacted regions, and it's also offering free access to service for education in certain sectors. So, I mean, if you look at the terms of growth there, so Microsoft's collaboration application Teams, since the 31st of January, saw a 500% increase in the use of meetings, calling, and conferences, and 200% increase in use through its mobile application. And that was actually at the end of last month. So you can imagine that that's probably increased significantly since then. Since the onset of the crisis, Cisco WebEx, in terms of the meetings and collaboration platform, has seen a multiplication of user numbers. And I think in March, there were more than 6 billion minutes spent in virtual WebEx meetings. So Zoom arguably has experienced the most demand from sort of a standing start. I think the platform had 10 million daily active users, which is a single user performing some sort of function on the platform. That was back in December 2019. That number's grown to more than 200 million, so nearly a 2,000% increase in user numbers. In terms of what these providers are doing, other than you can see what they're doing on the screen, both Cisco and Microsoft have pledged a lot of services. Cisco has pledged $225 million to help with the crisis, and I think that'll be $8 million of that will actually be in cash donations, and the other will be in free products and services to various funds, including to the United Nations COVID Fund. Same with Microsoft. They've made absolutely loads of donations of services, and there was a particularly large $1 million donation I saw the other day to a Seattle-based response company. In terms of Zoom, the donation, they started very early on with their development of the platform in China. Zoom has encountered some issues as it's been sort of rising in popularity. We've seen there's a couple of ongoing lawsuits in terms of Zoom, but the general popularity of the platform has amplified massively. And we should say that that's not just in the business world. As probably a lot of you will be aware working from home, the consumer awareness of Zoom as a platform has increased significantly. And that goes back to that slide that we were talking about previously, a 30% increase in enterprise awareness of Zoom as a product set. You can hit the next 3 companies there. So I also wanted to have a look at the over-the-top telco providers. So RingCentral and 8x8, they already offered freemium versions of their products, but they've now extended those offers, maybe for a slightly added some features as 8x8 have. And actually, RingCentral will now offer its Office platform for free of charge to not-for-profits and public service organizations, including schools and healthcare. I wanted to take a look at LogMeIn as well, because their go-to platform, GoToMeeting and GoToWebinar, one of the most popular there, holds a large market share. They've actually created a brand new package in terms of what they're calling emergency remote working kits, and they're available for public sectors, again, on a free trial basis for up to 3 months, and they include all the things you'd expect: video and calling capability, virtual events, and webinars with remote sharing of content and that sort of thing. We have seen a big focus, and I think it's important to highlight here in terms of the marketing, and I thought it was particularly interesting from these 3 companies that we've seen a heavy focus on the compliance and legal aspects of the platform. And that may well be in a response to a platform like Zoom, which seems to have shot up in terms of popularity. And maybe these providers are looking more at their pre-existing history in terms of compliance and logistics and legal. And we've seen that from all 3, both RingCentral, 8x8 and LogMeIn have had a big focus on those particular areas. So Dom, you can hit the last 3 customers that I've focused on there. I wanted to have a look at some of them, what we might consider more legacy on-premise providers. So Avaya have been particularly strong with their marketing around COVID. In fact, they were pretty early in terms of assisting. They offered a number of kit to hospitals in the Jiangxi province in China when it was hit by the outbreak pretty early on, and their donation has continued. In fact, we'll come on to contact center in a minute, but they've actually really focused on those contact center agents, and apparently they've moved over 200,000 contact center agents with the ability to work remotely. They've seen also a 500% increase in video collaboration traffic on the Avaya Spaces platform, which, as you can see there, is now going to be offered for free, which offers some really good features actually, and for up to 200 people. Mitel, similar vein, they're offering a 6-month free trial of MyCollab and MyCollab meetings, and that effectively offers all of the functionality you'd expect from a collaboration application, including video and voice. And I think one of the main areas of focus, which Dom will come on to a bit in the conclusion, is this is a real opportunity for these on-premise, maybe what we consider slightly more legacy vendors, to really accelerate migration to the cloud. And we've seen that absolutely as well with the final one there, Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise, who their Rainbow platform, which is their collaboration platform, and also has a number of innovative CPaaS integrations. That's going to be available with a limited amount of free licenses for certain customers up to the 30th of June. So that'll offer more features, up to 300 participants, video and voice calling and conferencing, as you'd expect. The ALE have placed a big focus on education and public sectors, but that free license offer is actually universal. So I just wanted to highlight there those 9 companies, what their approach has been, and that very much mirrors what we've heard in the survey from service providers and vendors that have participated, that free trials, freemium offers, and discounts are a key route to market in an aim to try and assist the enterprise with this enforced migration. And Dom, you can hit on to the next one here. So obviously one of the key areas is contact center, and enabling contact center users to work from home efficiently. And we've seen a number, we were actually chatting in the preparation for this webinar about a number of issues in terms of compliance. It's very difficult to take payments working from home outside of a secure contact center. But we've seen some really innovative and pretty aggressive strategies from all of these providers. So virtually all of them have offered some sort of COVID rapid response offer. So both Genesis, well, all of Genesis, Five9, Nice in Contact, and TalkDesk are offering some sort of accelerated migration path towards the cloud, aiming to offer agents deployment within 48 hours. They've realized that businesses need to do this quickly to continue their day-to-day function, and they're offering that with enhanced tool packs, which include assistance with migration. All of them as well have included lots of details about best practices, because, and I think Finbarr will come on to this later, one of the big issues that we've seen is the cultural challenges with enabling remote working. So all of these businesses have focused heavily on marketing as well, not just on the hard product side, but also the soft assistance in terms of what you need as a business to actually successfully manage remote workers working from home. As well as looking at the CCaaS providers, so those contact center as a service providers, I also wanted to talk about CPaaS, because that's something at Cavell we're really interested in. We think CPaaS is absolutely key to sort of customer engagement, and the integration of communication functionality into business processes is massive in terms of enhancing customer journeys. So took a look at Twilio. For a start, they donated, I think, $1.5 billion to various global efforts, and I actually saw their CEO and his wife donating $500,000, which is very generous of them. But they are doing a very similar thing. So making sure that organizations are getting direct response. They're offering enhanced impact, what they're calling an impact access program, where they provide Twilio calling credits and messages, so that CPaaS integration can be offered to organizations who suddenly need to offer that remotely via the cloud. The same with Vonage, obviously highly focused on API integration into business flows, and they've offered some new offerings around business continuity, offering remote working, a new standalone video collaboration product which they're offering for free, and also a Vonage instant alert SMS service which works around APIs, which allows them to distribute real-time updates on the COVID pandemic from government agencies, and they've made that open source, and they're going to share it worldwide and freely available. So I just thought it was important to highlight there the main communication providers, what they're doing, communication and collaboration providers, but also in the contact center area, which is obviously where still the vast number of users are going to be provisioned. So you can hit the next slide there. So one thing we wanted to consider is what issues do these raise? And I think, Finbarr, were you going to have a look at the issues that we were discussing here?
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, there's been a lot of sort of broad discussion about what this is happening to the industry. But, of course, this shift towards sort of remote working, everyone's now at home, has caused some big issues as well. And as the next slide will show, we've sort of asked people what exactly is this, what problems are coming up and how are these things expressing themselves. So, of course, first and coming in top is this, in fact, that internal culture and the management of remote workers simply isn't in a position where people feel comfortable working from home in a lot of companies. You know, there's lots of companies that have reported that they have a very rigid management structure where managers were very engaged with employees, trying to make sure employees were always online, felt like that they were always touching in and all these sorts of things, which simply doesn't work if you're not in an office environment. Next, of course, we have security policies, which are a big problem. A lot of companies are still focused on securing people in the office, having secure systems with things like two-factor authentication, which work when you've got hardware set up for like putting cards in and things like that, and all go out the window the second that you have people working from home. You, of course, have the problem of having the right hardware to remote work, which has led to the extent where we've heard of companies just telling people to take their desktops home with them, and also problems in terms of sort of internet and things like that. Of course, then you have end users who just can't access cloud applications because they're only set up to be accessed from within the secure network in the office. And then you've got the problem with end users not having the appropriate network access, or their access on their network being pulled in multiple ways by their children who are now home and trying to get study done on like remote learning, or trying to watch Netflix to just kill their time. And obviously, of course, we've got, as Patrick's already talked about, the issue with contact centers, where some contact centers have been able to gear up to work remotely. A lot of contact centers haven't been able to do that, which is having knock-on effects for lots of businesses because they can't process payments over the phone and things like that. So there's a lot of issues being thrown up by this change as well. So whilst we have seen lots of optimism coming in terms of sort of numbers of new deals being closed and things like that, we also have to be aware of that this shift can't just happen without these knock-on effects. However, Dom, if we go to the next slide, you know, we are fairly confident, and I certainly am fairly confident as a networking analyst, that this has caused an inflection point where there is a bit of a broken dam effect on remote working. For a lot of the time when people have been considering remote working, they've been told that technology wasn't in place, it wasn't ready, that companies couldn't afford it, that it wouldn't work within company structure. And all of these things were created to stand in the way of this progress towards remote working. And to quote the numbers from our enterprise survey, which you've already seen a few of, you know, we predicted within the next few years that 50% of work companies would have over half of their workforce working from home 3 days a week. You know, who knows what the predictions are going to be now. There is going to be, I think, this battle to get people back into the office. And of course, all of the knock-on problems that come with that, you know, because you're thinking about how do we manage security? How do we manage all these other things when people aren't in the office? So on the next slide, we talk about how much sort of priority was already put on supporting remote workers. So this is from our enterprise research you've already seen a bit of. I can already see that 40% of US companies and 29% of EU companies were saying that they were turning to solutions like SD-WAN to help them figure out how to support remote workers on their networks. And of course, now we're seeing these solutions be deployed at a much more rapid speed, which is putting a lot of pressure on things like network engineers to get these into a position where they can work and they can help things. And this has a huge knock-on effect as well, as the next slide will show you. Just we're talking about security, because we've already been in a situation where we're talking about distributed security. We're talking about how we have network security when workers are always traveling or always moving. And this has led into a discussion about the entirety of network architecture as well, in terms of where we host things, where we manage security. Do we have everything routed through a central office, all these sorts of concerns. And the fact is that that doesn't work anymore. And when you think about, and we asked people what the most important things were to their network in the next 3 years, and one of the main answers was security while using cloud applications, the fact is that that problem has just been accelerated and ramped up to the max by this shift towards huge amounts of remote working, because you simply can't have a situation where people are working unsecure from home. So one of the statistics that I found quite interesting is I talked to a large European carrier, and they said that they'd seen an increase in 70% of people using their VPN. So they got up from around 30,000 people using it regularly across Europe to about 105,000 people. So, you can see this increasing need for security demand. And at the moment, it's being dealt with, companies like Cisco and companies like this company I spoke to are sort of dealing with it by just asking their employees to make sure that certain things are being dealt with only on the corporate network. It's like, well, if you're going to watch Netflix during the day, we can't actually stop you, but please make sure the VPN is turned off so that traffic isn't being done there. And I did briefly, just sort of as part of this network look, is to look at sort of how the SD-WAN and networking providers are responding to this, as Patrick did in the previous section with the cloud comms providers. And we see that VeloCloud, for example, have started offering at-home 3-month trial packages where you can get up to 100 units of hardware and software support for home workers to use their VeloCloud SD-WAN solution. Meraki have ramped up their sort of guidance on how IT managers can use and help support remote workers with VPN and security. It's also worth to note that aside from the amount that Cisco donated that Patrick talked about in the previous section, they have donated $1 million worth of collab and networking technology specifically, which is quite interesting. Companies like Ariaka are just offering upsells, so they're offering VPN concentrator licenses to add on to their existing services. And of course, Silver Peak are just increasing the amount of information available to help people get this network up and running and to help the network engineers at their customers. Because that's probably one of the biggest issues where we're running into problems, is that network engineers are needing to do a lot of work to get people set up at home in a secure way where they can work, which they didn't expect they would have to do this year.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Finbarr and Patrick, for your insights on there. I think they've been really great on what we're doing and how we're pulling all this together. I think we're coming to the end of what our research has kind of showed there. I'd like to thank everyone for joining here. Kind of conclude what our thoughts are here. I think one of the big issues in the industry is how are we going to change, as you saw, 70% of providers offering free or freemium models. As we move forward in the future, how are we going to convert some of those freemium models into paying users? I think a lot of the end users out there are going to get used to using collaboration tools, and be interested to see how that all changes going forward in the future. I think for the PBX providers as well, this is the real inflection point for them, that cloud is the future. A number of enterprises that we've spoken to haven't been able to enable remote working because they have on-premise equipment and weren't able to leverage the cloud to get their employees to work from home. So I think there's going to be a big shift over the next few months, and especially if people do start moving back to the office, of making sure that we're getting people to work from home and giving them the right tools in place. And as a service provider and vendor community, you need to be sitting there working out how you're going to get those tools, how you're going to take these customers on that journey and make sure everything's integrated together. Patrick wrote an interesting blog piece today looking at how people and enterprises had to make this choice pretty quickly and pretty rapidly and make sure they're moving to the cloud, getting the tools that they needed to make that shift within a week or so. I think once the dust settles on this, I think enterprises will be looking at how they can do this in a much more structured way. And as providers of telecom services, you need to be at the forefront of those discussions, holding their hands throughout this and making sure their services are both integrated, but also have the mobility that they need to do on this. We're, as Cavell, going to be obviously running this, as I said, in about 3 or 4 weeks' time, looking at how the impact's been over the last month. I think what we've been interested in looking at is whether, obviously the first month people were very quick to move to the cloud, but whether that trend is continuing, or actually whether everyone who could move to the cloud has done so already, and sales have slowed down massively. So we're really interested to see how this trend continues moving forward in the future. So I invite you all. We'll be sending out a survey in a couple of weeks' time to take part, participate again, and we'll get the results sent to you. We're going to be giving this presentation. We'll be hosting on our website, and I'll send you all a link around so that you can access this. If you need any of the data or want us to comment on anything, please let us know, and we're happy to do so. And anyone who's been buying our reports over the last 6 months, we'll be updating our forecasts for the cloud comms markets across Europe to reflect some of the growth that we've seen, and making adjustments to that in line with our Q2 reports that will be coming out in about 4 months' time. With that, I'd like to thank everyone for joining. We'll be sending out the slides shortly, and I hope you'll stay safe and speak to you soon. Thank you all very much, and see you later.